Thorpe. Give everybody a hand.
So what I thought I'd do is just kind of walk you through, starting from the downtown, where we are with Expo Phase 1, then move on to Expo Phase 2, some of the things that are going on in Expo Phase 2, because we've got a lot of stuff going on there right now too. Starting with storage yard in the downtown area, kind of morphed. Originally, the EIR for Expo Phase 1 had an expansion of the Blue Line facility down in Long Beach, and we weren't able to do that because it was under the SCE power lines, and they adopted a rule that you can't build anything under them, so we had to relocate it. So we looked at the downtown area, really couldn't find anything. What we tried to do is fit in a small facility that could accommodate 16 vehicles for the first phase of the project. We were well into that and well over budget, unfortunately, when Measure R got passed. So now we have a project that goes all the way out to Santa Monica, and with that we needed a much, much larger maintenance facility. So we abandoned the downtown maintenance facility and are now using what we call a midday layover facility that accommodates 16 vehicles. That will be down where the Blue Line comes in on Washington Street, makes the turn on Washington off of Long Beach Avenue. And so we're going to be able to expand that. Metro is actually going to do that, so we're going to transfer the funds back to Metro, and they'll actually be doing that work. In the interim, we'll probably be storing some of the vehicles down in Long Beach when we get started until that work is done. As far as moving there towards the west, we've got a lot of improvements at the Pico station we needed because both lines are going to be running together at that station, so we've got another entrance, widen some things out that the PUC has asked for. Moving further west, we get into probably the most complex aspect of the Expo Phase 1, and that is the junction where the Blue Line takes off on Washington, Expo continues down Flower. We have a lot of very complicated train signaling to accommodate basically two lines coming in at 6-minute headways. So we have 3-minute headways on that stretch from Washington down into the 7th Metro station. On top of that, because of the Chatsworth crash, Metro went back and looked at any places where there might be a potential head-on train-to-train collision. They identified the Expo Blue Line Junction as one of those, and so pretty much late in the game, Metro gave us $5 million to implement automatic train protection in that location. So right now we're struggling with the software stuff to make sure that works. We think we might have some fixes, contractor, so hopefully that, because that is critical. We have to have that in order to start running the Expo line. As far as the next section, basically from the Washington Street, I'd say LA Trade Tech, all the way to Gramercy, all of that is street running except for a trench area. That has all been tested out now and is working fine because we have traffic priority, no gates in that location. So that has been tested out. Right now, the contractor's focus is testing all the gated crossings from Gramercy out to La Cienega. And the contractor that we have right now that's working on that FFP, their project pretty much ends on the west side of Iona Creek. The reason for that is we were going to have an interim station in Culver City. We got the funding to build the aerial structure in Culver City, or at least half of it. And so we moved that from phase 2 into phase 1. We did that pretty late in the game. And so that portion of the project in phase 1 will actually follow our first phase. So right now we're focusing on getting the system operational to La Cienega. And that'll be the first area that we get operational. So we've got a portion to Gramercy tested. We now have to test out all the gate crossing areas. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of software and other issues with the contractor on that. Their substantial completion was supposed to be June 15th. They're now shooting August 15th. I suspect it'll be more somewhere in the September timeframe. As soon as they get that gate crossing area tested out, then we'll be able to better identify when we'll actually be able to open up to La Cienega. Another element that needs to be done, for those I don't know have been out that way, we need to get the parking structure. We have about a 500-car parking structure at La Cienega. That has been underway for some time, and that's right now on schedule for an October completion date. So we're still shooting for end of the year opening to La Cienega, but that depends on the testing program, and as I indicated, the contractor's struggling right now. We've lost about a month to schedule because of some of the bugs that they've had and they're working at. But we're still optimistic. Probably the next couple of weeks will be critical. If we don't have the gates tested out in that segment, we'll probably be able to make the end of the year. We're still targeting the end of the year for revenue synergy. Then we have the segment from La Cienega, or actually Bayona Creek, up the aerial structure. We still have work. We've got a park and ride, 600-car temporary park and ride at in Culver City, and the reason it's temporary is the area will eventually be converted over to a transit-oriented development. The city paid $2.9 million to stiffen up the columns and put them an extra 30 feet into the ground so that they can go down 3 stories with parking structures in that area. So there'll be 3 levels of parking. We'll have about 350 spaces when we open up to Santa Monica, because our parking demand goes down once we get all the way out to Santa Monica. So we'll go from 600 down to 350. They'll be underground as part of the transit-oriented development in Culver City. So that we still have that interim parking lot to do. We still have a bike path in that area to finish off. And then we have all of the street improvements on Washington and National from Bayona Creek up that still needs to be done. And we'll have a different contractor, most likely the contractor that's building the aerial structure, do that work for us. We're targeting early next year to open up all the way to Culver City. That depends on getting some agreements together with Culver City that we're working on right now, and getting an agreement on how we're going to build that parking ride area in Culver City. So that kind of takes us through from downtown out to Culver City. And then we move into phase 2 of the project. Phase 2 is going very well right now. Broken into a couple of different things. We've got the major contract, which we call the alignment contract, that builds from Culver City, all the structures, track work, train control, everything, all the way out to Santa Monica. So that major contract has been awarded to a joint venture of Skanska, Rados. The project manager for Skanska is Mike Aparicio. Mike Aparicio was on the Pasadena line. He was on the east side line, both of them very successful projects, so he knows what he's doing, and we think that we're in good hands in phase 2 of the project with him on board. 3 different things. That's one. It's a $546 million contract with that firm. We decided we have a maintenance facility, and based on lessons learned in Pasadena, we found that heavy civil contractors aren't really good at maintenance facilities. It isn't their forte. They typically have to subcontract them out. In the case of Santa Monica, the maintenance facility is right next to a residential neighborhood, so there has to be a lot of special attention being paid to how we construct and how we design this in Santa Monica. So we decided to go to a traditional design, bid, and build project. So we're in the design phases. We have a designer on board. He's working with the community. He's had 1 meeting with the community. We've had 2 design charrette meetings. We'll be going out back in August to the community with a couple of concepts for a maintenance facility, but that will be a separate project from the mainline project. Then we have a 3rd project, which is, we call it the VBU project, the Venice Boulevard Underpass, and that basically completes the aerial structure that stops right now just short of Venice Boulevard. It completes the aerial structure across the street where it ties into the next major alignment project. We got bids in today. They came in $3 million under budget, so that was good news for us. So it's always nice to get off to a good start. So far we have about $560 million in phase 2 that's within or under budget, so in fixed price contracts. So that's good news for the second phase of the project. As far as what's going on right now, we call it SRJV. It's the Skanska Radios joint venture. They are mobilizing right now. I think they have some 60 designers on board, working in their downtown offices, working away on design. Next week we should get the track work design, which will be the first element of the project that will come out of the design area. They are, some of the first orders of work will be utility relocation, a lot of utility relocation on the project. And they're out potholing right now, so if you see people out working in that area, it's probably the joint venture's potholing activities, pre-construction surveys, a lot of pre-construction work is going on right now. By the end of the year, we should have major utility relocation going on, and the contractor is very aggressive and very optimistic. They think they'll have the first column or an area of structure in the ground by January of next year. So that's pretty impressive that they're able to pull that off. So, some of the other things that are going on, some of the things that we're working on right now is we have an I-10 box structure that was built to accommodate 1 track for freight under the 10 freeway. We're trying to squeeze in 2 tracks into that box structure. It's becoming very difficult. If we can't do it, we'll have Carmageddon 2 on our hands, which means we have to shut down the westbound I-10 freeway for about 3 or 4 months. Which would be, as you can imagine, not 54 hours, 3 months. That would be a pretty significant detour. So you can imagine we're trying everything we can to squeeze 2 tracks into that box structure. We've got some ideas. It's going to require some variances from Metro on their clearances, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to pull that off.
Question, just a real quick question on that. Can you do like a gauntlet track or something?
Well, I mean, those are the fallback options that we would explore if we couldn't. Yeah, definitely, Metro obviously doesn't want to see a gauntlet track. The area that we have is just where the box turns, so it's only about, well, you know, it's probably less than 1,000 feet long section where we have the clearance problems. And yeah, we probably, one option would be to run a gauntlet track in that area. Obviously, Metro is opposed to that primarily because of the uncertainty it incorporates into the operation, especially when you get to the downtown and you're trying to fit, you know, into the blue line 6-minute headway with the Expo line 6-minute headway.
So I'm saying San Diego did it, so I was curious.
No, I remember that. That was the first time we ever did it on the 805 freeway. And it worked fine for, what, 3 or 4 years, but, you know, ultimately we went back and put a second track over the 805 freeway. So that is a possibility, certainly less desirable, but probably more desirable than the $30+ million of tearing up the freeway and rebuilding the box in 3 months of shutdown. So we're not giving up on getting those tracks.
Well, could you use a tunnel boring machine and cut a tunnel right next to it?
You could, but that would be very, very expensive.
Oh, that's more expensive than...
Oh, yeah.
Have they considered the possibility of a jack box rather than TBM or?
Yeah, I mean, all of those, but they're very expensive options, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it would ultimately be up to somebody, where do you get the money? I mean, right now, you've got Metro and a cost containment project that says you live within your budget, and if you can't, cut back the project. So, you jack a box, do a tunnel to get out to maybe Bergmont and not get all the way to Santa Monica. I mean, those are real political policy issues that can get pretty nasty. So we've got that. Another real big risk to the Phase 2 project is what we call the Kentner box. And that runs down, it was built in the 1930s. It's a brick lined mortar box that is 40 feet by 80 feet. I mean, it's a gigantic thing that runs all the way down Colorado Boulevard. And the question is, we have to be over the top of it. And so the question is, can that box support the loading of the train that we're going to put on it? Or do we have to do something to either support the track structure so we don't put a load on it, basically bridge over it, or whether we have to line the inside of the thing. We think the lowest, if we have to do something, probably the lowest cost is to line it. That's probably about $17 million in additional costs that we'd obviously like not to incur, but right now the contractor's out taking core samples of that box and seeing if we're going to be able to support it. Some of the other things that we're dealing with on Expo Phase 2 is the terminus station. The city of Santa Monica is very concerned the way the alignment comes down Colorado Boulevard and between 4th and 5th turns into a vacant piece of property that the city bought a long time ago and wants to do a joint development. We have it as our terminus station. They're very concerned about the time it's going to take to get the train in and out because it has to cross over the eastbound lanes of Colorado Boulevard. And so they're very worried about all of the backup on the freeway on 4th and 5th. So we've come up with 3 different alternatives that we think work. And excuse me. We're working through those now. We think we've got at least 2 scenarios that work very well, but we're doing a lot of traffic modeling right now to make sure. And one of our concerns is we may be able to get the station in, but we think we're going to need some areas for pedestrian queuing. There's going to be a lot of crowds on weekends at that particular station. So we need to make sure that we accommodate the pedestrians, think about them as well as the traffic stuff. So that's something in Santa Monica we're dealing with. Santa Monica's also interested in some betterments. They'd like to see 2 side platforms instead of a center platform at the Bergmont station because they plan to develop that. They've got some plans for that area. And they want a second entrance at 17th Street. They're looking, the betterments they would pay for, but we have to have decisions very quickly in order not to slow down the contractor. So we're targeting a September date in Santa Monica City Council to make the decision on the terminus station, lane widths on Colorado Boulevard, and some of the betterment improvements that they're looking for. Once we get through that, we get through the I-10 box issue, the Kettner, then we'll pretty much have what we plan to do out there. One area that we were going to have at grade was Sepulveda. We're going to cross Sepulveda at grade. In order to do that, we had to put an additional lane on Sepulveda. We had to buy a lot of property, move a lot of utilities. So we bid out having an aerial station at Sepulveda and had them bid the difference between at grade and elevated. At grade, or elevated came in at about $5.3 million more than at grade. City of LA had a traffic mitigation fund and voted to pay the additional 5.3 to put it over Sepulveda Boulevard. So that's one of the changes from our original project. Other than that, it's pretty much what the FDIR called out for from basically Colorado, or excuse me, from Culver City all the way out to Santa Monica. So we get some of those things behind us over the next year, we should be pretty much good to go.
Rick, I forgot, how do you end up dealing with the 405 at Sawtelle? Particularly with an aerial structure.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. What we do, and it's very, very tight. Now, especially that we're coming off of Sepulveda, we get down to grade, and then we're going to go up as close to the bottom of the 405 freeway as we can get, and then go over Sawtelle, but that's going to require us lowering Sawtelle. So it's going to be a combination of the two. The contractor has a very elaborate design for that area.
So it's actually the lowering of Sawtelle because you can't get the clearance.
You can't get the clearance. So we're pushing it up as high as we can against the bottom of the bridge, but we still can't get enough clearance.
Downward measurement, pantograph and work your way down.
Yeah, I mean, the pantograph will go down to 14 feet. Normally, it's set at about 18 feet over streets clearance.
What's your maximum grade that you allow? Maximum slope?
The maximum, I think, is, we're waiting for the track work, but the preliminary was about 1.6%.
What's the projected completion date for Santa Monica?
2015, probably the end of 2015, or early 2016. The substantial completion date for the contractor is July 2015. But then you have to add on 5 to 6 months, give yourself some flow, then you've got pre-revenue operations, Metro goes through about 3-4 months of that, before they're ready to open it up to the public.
And what's the projected ridership?
You know, that's interesting. We always get into trouble by doing this, but it's a standard way that FTA requires. You have to project the ridership to 2030, so 64,000 in 2030. Then you have to back off, and Metro backs off, and they've got some magic formula that I don't even know what it is to get the opening day. And I think they adjust it based on what they feel is appropriate.
He gets 500 on the opening day.
Yeah, it's probably 500, so they look great when, 50,000 show up. They learned that from Pasadena. Everybody said it was a total disaster in Pasadena. I kept telling everybody, wait a minute. The blue line to Long Beach started at 17,000 people a day. It's now carrying 85,000. Pasadena started at 12,000, and it's up to, I don't know, 39, 40,000.
36.
36. So it will take some time, but eventually it'll get up. But I think Expo will be pretty heavy from day one. So. Any other questions?
Yeah, on the municipality structure, how far do they have to drill down for those vents?
Usually, most of ours at La Brea and Los Angeles, it depends on the soil conditions, but typically 80 to 100 feet in the ground.
I was just wondering how they get one of those big rigs, so I was out there watching, drilling for the bridge out in Venice, and they're huge.
Yeah, they do, and then they have all of these bits that they keep adding on as they go down. So, and then as they bring it back up, they take the bits apart. So yeah, they go a lot further down than the cranes.
What about on the new Venice bridge? Are they going to be the same type? Are they going to shut down Venice National Robertson there? Or are they going to restrict the road?
But we do have one column that goes in the middle. So that will be up to the contractor to figure out a construction staging plan to get that one in the middle of the street. Other than that, we can work on either side. So it's just that one bent in the middle of the street that's going to be.
So then once you get on the other side of Venice, it's a drop down.
No, we stay, right now you've got the aerial structure up above. We go across the street and I think the contractor has an MSE wall that he's going to do because he goes into an embankment on the other side. And so
it'll just stay like the at Los Angeles, which comes always got that image.
yeah, somewhat like that, a little bit different. So.
7th and Flower, are you doing anything else there, or is that going to support all the extra trains? As it stands, or do you have to do anything else?
7th and Metro, station. The only thing that we are doing is constructing a supervisor's booth that will allow a supervisor to see the trains coming in, and we'll be able to direct them to different platforms from the supervisor's booth. They're going to have a very quick turnaround in the tunnel area with that 3-minute headway, and so they're going to station somebody up there full time. It originally was going to be a Pico, and then they talked about having somebody at the junction, but now we've got the ability with train control, the cab signaling, to send signals all the way back to the supervisor. So the supervisor will be able to see the trains coming in literally as they come in, but I'll also see them all the way back to the junction.
Would the Blue and Expo line trains be using separate platforms? There are two platforms.
Now, because again of the tight headway, Metro is requiring us to buy 3-car trains for the entire Expo line because they want the ability to send, for example, a Blue Line train out to Santa Monica and vice versa, Santa Monica train down, just from an operational standpoint. So if they get behind schedule, they have the ability to recover better if they may send 2 Expo trains down to Long Beach and Blue Line train out to Santa
So
Monica,
that's
Well,
what-
so
depending on the schedule.
So passengers may end up on the wrong train if they
Well,
don't-
they're gonna have to, you're gonna
I
have
mean, a lot of people
to be
wonder
careful
red
which
line.
platform they're gonna get on, yeah. It's either-
So that's why a month ago when you were testing and parking trains out at Hayden, they were trying to make sure they could park 3-car trains past the crossover.
Exactly. So they'll bring them back in and then they'll,
Well, they were seeing where they could put trains at night, because they're looking to park trains out at Hayden.
yeah, and I think they'll park trains in the tunnel, because on the tail tracks in the tunnels. But I'm not an operations guy, so it's only what I've heard.
Are the improvements
We just built what they asked.
Are the improvements to the station at Pico already completed, and have there been any
Yeah.
preliminary talks with AIG for more improvements?
No, most of the improvements are going to go out there. There are a few tweaks that they have to do, but most of it's already in.
Do you envision any problems having the DWP move all their nasty power lines and cable lines and phone lines and all the other crap?
That's an excellent point.
Or would it be better
those-
just to get a
those of
pickup truck
you-
and knock
yeah.
out the...
Those of you that may have been following the Preston Expo Phase 1 project, the delay in getting the DWP lines down in La Cienega cost us about a year. That being said, if they would have gotten them down in time, we still would have been delayed a year because of the CPUC at Farmdale. So we had a lot of issues going on that was going to hold us up. But you're right, and so we're trying to get out in front. We're in discussions with DWP right now. The way they normally do things is they take 85% design before they even start their design. They complete their design before they then do their conduit work, and then they complete their conduit work before they pull wires. We laid it out, and they wouldn't be done until 2018 if we do it their normal way. So something's got to give, and so
Get old
we've
pickup
got
truck
to
and
get
take
them.
out the poles.
We've got to get them to start looking at plans sooner. We've got to get them to overlap their schedules, and they may have to bring on consultants. But we're having those discussions with them right now. We know the way they normally do things, we'll never get done. So something's got to change. And that being said, the mayor's office has hired somebody as a coordinator between Metro, Expo, DWP. They recognize we can't have what happened last time. So, we're optimistic, but I don't have an answer for you at this point, other than it's going to be a big issue, getting them all done. I think you'll wind up with this contractor because he's got a firm fixed price bid, and you got to remember that the Expo 1 contractor really lucked out because he was so far behind. If it wasn't for DWP and the PUC, his design was over a year late, and he would have been in real trouble if he didn't have somebody to blame it on. And this contractor doesn't have all of those ways to get out of it. And we don't see the delays than potentially DWP. We get that resolved, but I think you'll see this contractor getting columns in the ground, building segments of the bridge. You may see a whole bridge with one segment left out where the DWP line. I don't think he's going to wait until everything's underground before he starts construction.
I spoke to a couple of the crews last week when they were potholing, and they basically are shovel ready. They want to go now.
Well, like you said, they want to have the first column up by January. There's no way we're going to have DWP lines underground by then. So I think you'll see all the columns going in, all the designs will be done, columns will go in, they'll build as much as they possibly can.
Still basically put the columns in minus the faults work.
Right, exactly. Well, and they may put faults work in the areas, some of those bridges may have 4 or 5 spans to them. And they'll build all the spans with faults work, except for the one where the DWP goes through. They'll do it.
Somewhat similar question. For your project, how far on either side of the right-of-way were you responsible for? Because I noticed in some places, like, you paved the street right next to the right way, but the next lane wasn't. And then in some places, like, new street lights went in, and the trees went in. So I was trying to figure out, like, how far out did you actually get involved in?
It all depends, because there was a bike path that was part of the project. And so when you go through the environmental stages, in some areas we had to put additional right turn pockets, left turn pockets, so we had to widen out the street. In other areas we had to widen it out on our side of the right of way to get the bike path. There was a 5-foot on either side bike path. So it just depended on exactly where you were as to what we did. And then as far as the repaving goes, then that was more or less a negotiation with the Bureau of Engineering with the City of LA as to how far out we did a grind and overlay. And that had to do with a lot of where they were with the pavement.
Is that covering up, like, places you were? Because you, why didn't they just go one more lane, make the whole street look nice?
They didn't want to pay
They didn't
for
want to
it.
pay for it. Okay.
We didn't have the money to pay for it.
Right.
so.
And then one other quick engineering question. Assuming Crenshaw is going to go under Expo, at the junction of Crenshaw and Expo, had you done any work at that site knowing that someday somebody would be going under your right of way?
No, because we didn't know. I mean, there was, the Crenshaw line was supposed to be at grade. Nobody even talked about it underground. I mean, there was talk about it. To this day, we don't know exactly what's going to happen.
If they, it looks like they might go under.
But if they-
You're set for it, nothing would affect
Yeah, it's
your
going to stay
operation.
the same way. You know, if they go under, they'll have to come up on either side of the street with their entrances into the station. I don't know, they may even want to come up in between the tracks and come in the back way. I don't know, but they're a long ways from figuring.
It won't affect your operation.
But it won't affect us. I mean, we're basically done, and they'll have to work around what we have in place, or they'll have to reconstruct it the way they want. That it?
Well,
Oh, we got more questions.
you said phase 1A would be opening by the end of this year. Well, I had heard November 15th was opening day. Is that not set in stone?
We've always said the end of the year. Metro picked that date for budget purposes, so that they knew they would have enough money for fiscal year to pay in case we got it open by November 15th. But number one, I mean, the opening date, realistically, once we get close, will be determined on when the politicians are available to cut the ribbon. The other thing is that I don't think Metro wants to open up the system for the first time with the biggest game of the year, the UCLA-USC football game on November 27th. So there's things that have nothing to do with whether we're ready to run that determine the revenue date. But it's primarily driven by politicians. Yes, sir, back in that corner hallway.
All right, since I live near Venice and Robertson, relatively speaking, I've watched the station there
Question?
get going and support. When are you going to have wire and track at that end? Do
Well,
you have a date approximately?
yeah, I can tell you the track, it's in.
Okay, I can't see it.
They're doing the outbound side right now.
Track's in. They're, this next week, they're making the cantilever arms for the overhead power. I think by the first or second week of September, they'll start setting poles for the OCS, and I think by the end of September, they'll have the OCS done.
A laser.
Yeah. More questions? What, Wayne?
Yeah, I don't know if you answered this, I got here late, but my understanding is that when contracts were let for phase 1, that it was let up in multiple pieces instead of one contract. And the question was, what was the history behind that and how did it impact the costs?
Well, the contract was let in one.
Okay.
So it was what we call a negotiated design build.
Okay.
But the theory at the time was we would build and negotiate these into 3 packages. We called it Segment A, Segment B, and Segment C. Segment A was all of the downtown street work out to Gramercy. Segment B was Gramercy to the first area structure, which is La Brea. And Segment C had all the area structures. And the idea was that they would, Segment B, they designed first, we negotiated, and they would build it. Segment A was second, Segment C third, because it had the area structures. Because they fell so far behind, in order to have any semblance of being here, otherwise it'd be another 2 years.
So it's kind of a fast track.
We had to break it up even to more pieces. So there was segment A1, there was segment A2, there was segment A3, then there was segment A1A, A1B, and that I don't think had an effect overall on the cost, but it certainly had effect on the time and why we're a year behind schedule. I mean, if you, as I was indicating to these people, the rest of them a little bit earlier, if it wasn't for the DWP delay of a year and the PUC delay of a year plus,
What piece was it?
that was at the Dorsey High School issue. If it wasn't for those, the contractor would have been in real trouble. He wouldn't have an excuse on the delay and would be into some severe liquidated damages.
Would you think that without those other issues, the contract would probably end up would have been late? So
Yeah,
there was kind of a vote.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any way they would have finished.
So even
given-
though
They went through 3 management changes at the time.
so they lucked out, because even though they had other outside external things that were holding it up and causing delays, they would have been late anyhow. So,
Yeah, they would never have done that.
2 questions. One is relative to the structure over Venice. I understand that there is a need to move the southern, so the eastbound lanes of Venice to the south to accommodate the overhead, to accommodate the flyover,
There's
a realignment of Venice Boulevard at Robertson.
Well, I don't believe so. There has to be another left turn pocket, so there's a slight shift. So right at that intersection, there's a little bit of some changes.
So, I guess there's just the specific, and it may be too specific for you. Is there, would you use the, what is now quote unquote the parking lane as?
You're exactly right.
Too
Way
specific.
for me.
The second
Talk
question.
to our design.
Second question is, in the north of the 10 freeway in the ditch, what is the buffer and treatment for those homes in the community that's been very vocal?
Well, we don't believe there's any special treatment because instead of, I mean, where it's up at grade at Westwood and that sort of thing, we have sound walls, but we're down in a trench, and so there's not going to be any sound. We're not going to hear anything. So, I think those people that are complaining just don't want to see the project go. They're the ones that are filing a lawsuit against the project. They want everything underground so they don't see it. They would rather not have any stations in their neighborhoods.
With the,
What is the status of that lawsuit at this point? Is it dead or live or?
The lawsuit, we won at the lower court level. They have appealed the decision. Briefs are being filed on August 23rd, and they'll set a trial date to public court. They'll have, their briefs are due at the end of August. Ours are sometime in September, and then we'll set a trial.
so then what happened last Thursday? Was it just the motion was turning in papers? I thought there was a hearing on last Thursday. I thought it was an actual hearing last Thursday in court.
It was just to compel them to pay the money that they.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that was just the motion for us to compel them to pay. There wasn't any. Art,
which
yes,
group
there
was
was a
opposed?
hearing and they were, we had as part of the lower court decision, the cost to prepare what they call the administrative record. The cost to prepare the record was $58,000. So when the judge found in our favor, he also found in our favor and compelled them to pay the $58,000. So we didn't think that they had the $58,000. So we filed them, yet they were going on with their lawsuit. So we said, hey, wait a minute, we want to get paid our $58,000. So we went to the courts, filed a motion and said, we want them to put up security against that $58,000, and because it doesn't matter whether they win or lose at the appellate court level, they still owe us $58,000.
So their appeal really isn't until the end of August, September. So what happened last week was,
That was just a decision by the judge to require them to put up a security for basically half of their $58,000. Now that they can appeal too. No problem.
Any more questions? Yes.
I was wondering why Sepulveda was picked over Sawtell for the station, because it seems like Sawtell is closer to the halfway point between Westwood and Bundy, and Sepulveda is kind of closer to Westwood.
Because of a lot of the north-southwest service that runs up and down in that area, and because that's an area where we can get a parking ride facility, so we're building a parking structure on the southwest corner where LADOT is. We're actually going to build a parking structure above their parking lot at that location. And the potential of Kasdan development and some of that.
The cement plant replacement.
Could you tell me a little bit about your plans for the Bundy Expo station?
What do you mean?
Well, the station at Bundy and
Yeah,
Exposition, right?
it's an aerial station,
I've
very
seen the
similar.
plans for it that you hadn't said, like, I just wondered if anything had changed.
No, that's what it's basically.
Still planning on parking under the,
Yeah. And La Brea, it's like a La Brea or a Hacienda type of a station.
and still
Elevated.
building over Sentinel, going over Sentinel. Do you know anything about the widening of Sentinel?
Okay,
Well,
got everybody's questions answered, hopefully?
Good.
At least for now?
well, in 10 minutes, we actually have some special guests here, so, but first I want to have everybody give Rick a big hand. Now, tonight's kind of a unique night. We have Sam Schwartz from New York City here, and I don't want to misstate, I want to say Dr. Gridlock, but I'm not sure if that's what it's.
Gridlock Sam.
Gridlock Sam, he does a column in the New York Daily News. And also we have Gene Skorpowski. And one of our bullet points on our actual meeting here is the Lausanne Corridor. But since Gene is sort of working very closely with the Lausanne Corridor, perhaps we could prevail on him to tell us a little about the Lausanne Corridor tonight too, if that's agreeable with you. So, yeah, no, we love that because, usually we get it from coming to the meetings, but, the man that's making the meetings is a lot different than us that goes to the meetings, so we appreciate that. Anyways, you want to tell us a little about the Lausanne Corridor? Maybe join Rick up here.
I think I could probably talk from here. I can see there's quite a crowd and a few things in the way. As you probably know, the Lausanne Corridor has been looking at some sort of a more cooperative and more mutually supportive operation of the three services that compete for the limited track capacity on the corridor. And the first attempt was to try and get the state work more closely with the local agencies. Well, a federal mandate has kind of prompted that in the sense that any corridor that is 750 miles or less must be divested of by Amtrak in terms of its national support and taken on as a local support. In California, of the 3 corridors, 2 of them are already 100% state supported, the San Joaquins and the Capital Corridor, which you probably know I headed for about 10.5 years. However, the Surfliner corridor, now called, used to be the San Diegans, back in the old days that I remember, when Rick was probably down in San Diego, there were 3 legacy trains that operated on that corridor at the time Amtrak was created. Those 3 trains are still funded by Amtrak, but the state's desire and investment to increase the service has made it roughly now a 70-30 cost split. Within about 2 years, the state must assume that additional cost split. If you haven't followed the federal requirements, this so-called Section 209, which requires this divestiture, had a rather hefty price tag coming along with it, to the tune of more than 20 million additional state dollars for the picking up of those 3 additional trains. The formula to be utilized by Amtrak was developed by Amtrak, so you can understand how that additional payment might have been calculated. At the present time, there's been a negotiation, and I think it's down between $9 and $10 million for the state to fully assume operation of the Lausanne corridor. There's a twofold impact here. First of all, the Lausanne corridor is 100% funded by state subsidy. There's no federal funds currently in it or in any of the national network trains. That will remain the same. However, there's also, since the time the corridor was started, a couple of commuter services which have developed along the line. One at the lower end, the coaster down to San Diego, between Oceanside and San Diego, and the other, as you know, between Oceanside and Los Angeles. Not necessarily well coordinated, which is another part of the challenge that's going on. But I think you probably saw a service change the beginning of July, which is a part of this effort, which now allows a transfer to be made between a couple of trains where you couldn't make transfers before, or at the very least you could race after the train and try to grab a couple as it went up the line. It's now a planned transfer, and we're actually looking at a service plan which will have a through San Diego train, or a San Diego coaster train, go up the line to Los Angeles, and a Lausanne train, the Metrolink train, going down to San Diego. Not because they like each other very much, but because that's where the passengers happen to want to go. And it will also allow another market to be developed, because as people have found in surveying the markets, it's not just a market that's headed to Los Angeles, and it's not just a market that's headed to San Diego. There's a lot of traffic in between, and right now, if you want to go from Solana Beach to Santa Ana, it's not an easy trip. Well, this will begin to address that market. Again, putting the service in places that, that exist where the people want to travel. So that's being worked out. We're not quite yet to the point where I think we will have one consolidated operation. The first step will be to take the intercity service and get that more in terms of local operation. So when the state has to assume the full cost of all of the Lausanne corridor services, it is likely, and it seems to be desirable amongst the agencies, that they will want to take on and manage that service locally, much like what was done in the Capital Corridor in Northern California. So this is the process that the Lausanne agency is going through. I was enticed back from my retirement in Florida by Mr. Kempton to assist in this effort. And at the moment, the agencies are going through the mating dances to basically determine where the best location is to be a managing agency. As you know, in Northern California, BART became the managing agency, not by any common understanding, but rather by a legislative mandate. But it did work and then has been continued. I think there's a little more cooperative spirit here in Southern California, largely because of the existence of commutation services. So we actually have San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, and all of the counties along the coast. I think there's 6 involved down to San Diego, working towards a local assumption of the management of that service and eventually more full integration with the coaster and the Metrolink services so that the corridor can be developed with a variety of services of local and express that would serve all the markets along the corridor. Clearly, its own, I don't know if you're aware, but the annual riders along the corridor now between the intercity services and the commuter are over 9.3 million annually. That number can escalate dramatically if there is more coordination, more inter-ticketing type arrangements. So we're looking at 2 phases. Number 1 is the short-term improvements. What can we do between now and 2014? That's some scheduling adjustments, filling some voids where trains don't run, doing some run-through trains between coaster and Metrolink, and probably cross-qualifying the crews on both ends. The second phase would be more intense, which is to basically integrate fully the commuter operation with the intercity operation, providing something more akin to what exists on the Northeast Corridor, where you would have at least an hourly service on the, we'll call the intercity, which would be a more limited stop service, supplemented on a regular memory type schedule with the local services that would serve the entire corridor. There's been a lot of cooperation. There's still a lot of, I won't call it distrust, I'll call it, I don't know if I want to get in bed with all these guys by all of the counties, but by talking together and working together, it is becoming much more cooperative. So I am envisioning by the end of this year to have a path forward, and there is a service plan being developed for implementation by 2014, which would give more of that through operation where it makes sense, where we can have services supplemented between the commuter and the intercity, a unified ticketing type system, most likely going through your value stored so that the customer really won't have to deal with the pound of flesh, whether it's a $6 trip on a local train or whether it's a $9 trip on an express train. They'll be able to use whatever that device is or whatever train is more convenient for them. So there's been a lot of progress. We're not quite there yet, but we are working towards it. The most pressing issue at the moment is the governance structure and in which what agency the management team resides. As you probably know, in Northern California, the Capital Corridor Management Team happens to reside in the BART organization. Well, BART is just one of 6 member agencies of the Capital Corridor. This will be a similar type of operation, and whether it's in LACNTA/Metrolink, or whether it's in Orange County, or whether it's in San Diego County, or some mix and match of it is to be determined. But the fact is that all of the agencies have agreed that in order to make the corridor work as effectively as it can operate and carry as many people as it could carry, there needs to be a higher degree of cooperation and integration among them. So it's been a very good experience. I've been at this now for almost a year. It's designed to wrap up around February of next year, and many of the elements of the study are coming together now, and I think at the September board meeting there will probably be some preliminary recommendations floated and findings. But it's been a very good exercise. It's a corridor with enormous potential. It has very good service, very good operation. Many parts of the day now, there are still some holes. That's what we're working on. It's how you fill out a plan. It's a 2014 plan for early implementation and a 2030 plan for longer range, which obviously would involve more capital investment and full double tracking for at least the base part of the line and perhaps triple, and in the case of Fullerton to LA, maybe even some quadruple tracking. So that's the story. That's what I'm doing out in California at least 30 to 40% of my time.
Great. This is kind of amazing. Don?
Hans had a question. At a recent meeting, you mentioned the possibility of a, I don't know, a shorter long-term commuter service between Ventura and Santa Barbara. Is that still looking good, or what's going on with
Yes,
that?
this is basically a service that was kind of spawned by the upcoming rebuilding project for 101 between Ventura, Santa Barbara counties. There aren't any other highways in that territory, so when you screw up the only one that's there, it would be nice to have an option for people, and that's what we're working on, is basically a commutation, a Monday to Friday type service to supplement the existing Surfliner schedule that would primarily be from, what do they call it now, they gave it a new name, is it East Ventura, which used to be the...
Montalvo.
Montalvo, yeah. East Ventura to what we're calling North Goleta. It's actually another platform that would be constructed maybe about a half a mile north of the existing Goleta station, because it just happens to be in the middle of 5,000 jobs that most of those people who are coming up on 101 in the morning want to get to, and the platform is literally walking distance to virtually all of them. So that's the goal on all of this, is to have basically a 5-station, one round trip to supplement the existing services that are out there.
Is that looking good right now, or?
Yeah, it's actually looking good, and UP is actually doing their internal modeling. We're doing our own modeling to double check just to be sure that their modeling is got the same input as our modeling has. But it's been a very cooperative effort, and if everything goes right, you actually could see the service implemented in the next calendar year, hopefully in advance of them starting the highway project.
The Los Angeles quarter is the second busiest railroad corridor in the United States. What are the chances, what do we have to do to get higher in terms of our numbers, especially if the Metrolink and Coaster work in tandem? But
When you say higher numbers, you're talking ridership numbers?
precisely.
Well, the first thing you're going to need before you get more ridership numbers is a capacity
Plan.
to handle the number of trains will be required to move the additional capacity. This line south of Laguna Niguel is like, weaving the thread through the eye of the needle. There's all stretches of single track. Some of them are in the process of being connected, but you still have a long ways to go to get that line fully double tracked. And between Fullerton and LA, you're looking at between 4 and 5 tracks. And that's without any consideration for whatever the high-speed rail decides it's going to do in that corridor. So we have recognized that is something that's out there, but the need and the demand for the existing corridor, this is the 9-point-something million passengers a year, just in those 6 county travel. That is by far and away. I mean, the Capital Corridor is the 3rd busiest, and that's a little less than 2 million. So it gives you some idea of the order of magnitude of the movement that you're talking about in this corridor.
Great.
What do you know about Metrolink's Del Mar race trains and how those came to be? And is that an example of more cooperation in the corridor?
Well, I think clearly on the latter part, there's no question about the level of cooperation. I really don't know much about the rest of it. I'm just dealing solely with the regular schedule.
Is the BNSF triple tracking project moving ahead right now, or is it stuck?
No, my understanding is that it is. However, they don't have the funding to grade separate Rosecrans Markham, which, if you're familiar with the crossing, it's a nice big intersection with multi-lane roads doing an X. And right in the middle of the X is the railroad. It's got 2 tracks now. They've got the potential to go to 4 or 5 tracks with grade crossing with lots of frequent trains. Somehow the funds to grade separate that need to be generated. That's not a good situation in the long term.
Any more questions for Gene?
I have one quick one.
All right.
Have you had a chance to ride the new Metrolink equipment since you've been out here the last couple of times? And what do you think?
I think it's great. I like the seats, the way the seats are not all facing. They have them in the directional. I think that that's good. But I think they've made what I consider for my larger sized body the same mistake most of them have made is my knees bang up against the seat in front of me. If they had given it 2 or 3 more inches and taking out 1 row of seats, they would make all the seats of the train comfortable, but that's a decision that folks make based on their capacity. Just take out 1 row of seats, you can space them out and make every train seat comfortable. But we still continue to try to jam as many seats in, then find that people are not comfortable.
I felt squashed even as a small person.
Think how I feel.
Well, I want to thank Gene, everybody, for thinking. And Sam, not to put you on the spot, but since you're here from New York City, I met Sam. We have this development that's happening in downtown Los Angeles, Farmers Field. And one of my friends, Jerry Givens from Parsons Brinkerhoff, called one day and said, Gerard and myself, we put this PowerPoint together showing how you could connect transit to Farmers Field. So there was a meeting in downtown LA back in February or March. That's where I first met Sam. And he does a lot of transit. And, you know, he's one of the world's experts on moving people. So perhaps you could say a few words.
Sure. First of all, I'm very excited about what I'm hearing. Because from a distance from 3,000 miles away, you don't associate Los Angeles with transit. And to hear of all the excitement in this room, and all clearly people very knowledgeable, and it sounds like people that are very active, it's wonderful to hear. And I'm very excited about what's happening in Southern California. And in fact, I'm coming out more often now. And this is Eric Whitstrand, who is now heading up our Los Angeles operation over here, because we think that this is a place that could look towards many of the things that you were referring to. When you're talking about Farmers Field, we do a lot with arenas and stadia, and our goal is to get people out of cars and to reduce the impact on communities. And we've had tremendous success with that. Most of it from the Midwest, from Chicago to the New York, New Jersey area, but the success has been incredibly impressive. With the New York Mets, they were building a new stadium, and their transit share was about 24%, and we got that up to 45%. And you know, as you were speaking about some of the scheduling changes, a lot had to do with scheduling, introducing super expresses, and a lot of communications. We then had a tougher one, and that was hockey fans in New Jersey, and the people going to the hockey games follow the modal splits that people in Los Angeles are following. 98% were coming by car, and they were moving to Newark, New Jersey. And I don't know if you know much about Newark, but if you listen to the news, it doesn't sound very good. It sounds like a pretty rough place to be.
Worse.
Yeah. So you know, Newark's got a tough reputation. Some of it deserved, some of it not deserved. How do you get hockey fans out of their car when they move to Newark? And again, we work with the transit agencies there, change some schedules. We have some gap trains that we fill in. We have coordination with game time, and as a result, it shocked me that we got Newark into transit shares of 35 to 40%.
You're kidding.
For hockey fans.
In Newark?
In Newark, New Jersey. Wow. So it was remarkable. What we're working on right now is the Nets are moving from New Jersey. They're the New Jersey Nets, and they went from the Meadowlands, which is out in the sticks. They're in Newark temporarily. They're going to be in Brooklyn next year. And they're going to be sitting right up on a transit hub, and it'll be part of a transit-oriented development. Ultimately, the housing portion of it, it's not going to happen for a while because of the economy, but the arena will open a year from now, so just about next summer. The city, through its equivalent of your secret process, set a goal, said, here's what would happen if you normally did a development in this location. You would have 40 to 50% car arrivals. Just because New Yorkers would take transit, it's not hard to get to 50%. We want you to get down to 28% by car, so the gap is transportation demand management. And it's those tools that get people out of their cars. And what do you do to get them out of their cars? From free transit services that we're looking at, excuse me, focus groups to try to identify what's going to get the most difficult driver out of their cars, to some remote parking facilities with shuttles running to the arena, and a whole list of different strategies. So that's what we're about, getting people out of their car. And I'm just very, very excited by meeting the number of people that are in this room and the real commitment to transit. I see a Los Angeles that is very exciting from a transportation point of view, and a Los Angeles that's going to change so dramatically over the next 10 to 20 years, in which people will be walking more, they'll be biking more, they'll be riding transit more, they'll be healthier, and they'll enjoy life more. And so what you're doing as a group, and I imagine this is still a small part of the LA population, is terrific. I applaud you guys. You guys are the mavericks. But I remember Rita Robinson, when I would meet with her, the DOT general manager, would say, what are you talking about, crowds in New York? Look at Broadway and 7th. And we had more pedestrians there than New York had in 1920. And you had streetcars running down Broadway and 7th. And, you know, so your future is to some extent a little bit of what your past was like. And it's just a very exciting future. So again, thank you for inviting me here today. And I really look forward to all the exciting things that I heard in this room.
Thank you. This is sort of a star-studded meeting tonight. We also have from RNL Design.
Aaron Kelly.
Tell a little about what you're working on.
We're currently working on the Expo maintenance facility, and we just finished our second charrette, design charrette for the facility. We did one 2 weeks ago where we were moving around the different boxes of space and trying to make sure that the metro operations were optimized with how the plan actually came to be. What we've done since then, and what we just finished up today, that we presented here to Rick, was two schemes, one of which adheres most to the EIR that was submitted and approved. That loads the facility down on the west side of the site. It created a few issues with a lot of studded service tracks. What we were able to do was to pull the service and inspection tracks out so we have pass-through, and we can really optimize Metro's efficiency by doing that. And then a second option that we've pursued that helps address some of the issues that the neighborhood expressed about visibility and noise and just the yard itself being there, is to move the building as a screen and slide that into more the middle of the site and string it out a little bit more linear east to west. That helps us from an energy efficiency standpoint. We can daylight a lot of the building, and it allows all of the service tracks to be pulled through. So right now we're taking those two different approaches and refining them a little bit more. We're also projecting a LEED goal, sustainability goal. We've pushed beyond that. We have a goal to try to reach zero net energy, so that the operating costs of the building are going to be putting money back into Metro's pockets for transit service rather than paying utility bills. So we've set the bar pretty high for ourselves as we go through the project. But now our task between now and the middle part of August is to prepare things so that we can present it to the community in Santa Monica and get their read on some of the deviations of what we showed in the EIR, that second scheme. And we'll see what the reaction is and go from there and start to flesh that into an architectural design. And one of the critical pieces is really making sure that we're adhering to the budget as well. So we're already running numbers, and we're pretty confident that we're well within the budget right now, but obviously we're just moving around lines on paper. We haven't really designed the facility, what the building is made of and such. So it's kind of figured in the way of the cost estimate at this point, but we at least have a target for what we're designing to. And we feel pretty comfortable with past projects that we've done that we're going to hit the budget and create a really efficient facility for Metro. raising the bar on rail facilities. A couple other projects that we've got right now, the Monte Station is underway. I'm leading a tour on Thursday for the leadership baptism that's in town. So, and then following that on Sunday, Tim Lindholm from Metro, Director of Capital Projects, he and I are leading the same tour on Sunday with the APTA Sustainability Workshop that's in town. So if any of you are attending that, look forward to seeing you there, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. We're in the middle of the construction project, and we're setting foundations for that. It's moving along pretty nicely, a little bit slower than we had originally anticipated. That was due to some soil issues that we had to mitigate. So that's a really great project. I don't know if people were aware, but we won an AIA Design Award for that, which is something remarkable for transit facilities. We're really trying to push the bar on design. And lastly, the Division 13 bus maintenance facility that's going right across from Gateway Transit Center is out for bid. Sorry. It's out for bid right now, and bids are coming back in from the contracting community, and we'll see where we're at with that. That's also a LEED Gold facility, like Del Monte and the Expo facility. So we're really trying to push sustainability in everything that we're doing as well.
Aaron, thank you. Arnold, do you want to tell us a little about what you're working on? Is that okay?
A thumbnail sketch at best.
That would be perfect.
Okay. It's been a long night.
This is Arnold Luft, and he's with ARUP, or how do we say it, ARUP?
Well, I'm the project manager on ARUP's behalf for the high-speed rail going from Fresno down to Bakersfield. And so on any given day, you could either read something very positive about the high-speed rail, depending on what city, county, and part of the state you're in, or something very negative. And so I've gotten quite used to the roller coaster. Unlike many rail projects, which many of you have been describing, the authority that is governing the high-speed rail is a non-rail authority. And so one of the very strong difficulties, if I can call it that, is that we work with a client that has no background in rail work. And so that has basically complicated the effort. The effort to date, which has gone on for several years, has really been dominated by two or three things. The environmental impact work, which has gone on for at least 3 years and is finally coming to closure with submittal in the month of August for review and approval of the EIR process. And tied in, Fresno to Bakersfield is 120 miles as the crow flies. And so trying to come up with an alignment, if you will, that is acceptable to the majority of people, as you might suppose, has been extremely complicated because there are people in different communities who have different ideas. If you've seen the papers recently, the original concept was to take the trains across the Tehachapi's out into Palmdale, and the group that I'm with is basically in the belief, if you will, that they've discovered or come up with an alternative that could save perhaps $1 billion worth of funding, which is a precious resource, and come in more parallel to the I-5 along the Grapevine. Well, the city of Palmdale feels that they are about to be bypassed if the authority takes that alternative route. And so they have basically initiated some litigation to get an injunction against moving out of Palmdale. But basically, we have now come to a point where, after all is said and done, that we have completed what's described as a 15% level of effort to support the EIR process. And that has an, let me call it, a defined alignment. I dare not use the word preferred because it's not authorized as a preferred alignment. So there are alternatives. There's a station in Fresno, there's a station in Bakersfield, and one of the options for a third station is in the Hanford-Tulare area, and there are opposition to some locations and acceptance on the part of some in other locations. And so these are issues that, while we're trying to close out the EIS-EIR process and the 15% design level of effort, are kind of irons in the fire that are going to have continuity until a final decision is reached. The project is segueing right at this moment from the 15% design to the 30% design level of effort, and we are under an extraordinarily tight time frame because of the ARA funding. If some of you are not familiar, that's a federal fund, the American Reconstruction and Rehabilitation or Recovery Act, which basically has a date certain that the project must be ready, ground ready, shovels in the ground, and that is a point in the third quarter of 2012. And so we are now, in a short time frame, have to turn around and prepare the very first procurement package, which is scheduled to be complete sometime in October of this year, so that we can go through the cycle of going out and qualifying bidders and receiving bids. And the way the authority has broken the project up between Fresno and Bakersfield, they're intending to be 4 civil works contracts. The first one will start north of Fresno at the San Joaquin River and go south of Fresno perhaps 25 or 35 miles. And that contract will be upwards of $2 billion. And then there will be 3 other contracts as we go south toward Bakersfield, and those contracts will be somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion. And then there is a 5th contract in the package, and that'll be the track work from Fresno to Bakersfield. Then obviously after that, there's going to have to be all of the systems contract. But that's a little bit over the horizon. The immediate objective is to get these 4 packages out on the street, and the 4th package, if I'm correct, is scheduled for April of 2012. So you can see there's an extraordinarily large order for a lot of work to be done for 4 or 5 procurement packages in a very tight and short period of time. So it means once we have a full notice to proceed, because we've only got a partial notice to proceed just now, we're going to have to ramp up dramatically in order to basically abide by the schedule. And so we have done a lot of planning, if you will, with very limited funding. That has certainly been a real albatross to the project because of the inability to have a significant pot of money so that you don't constantly have to worry about, is this spigot partly open or fully open, and can you go forward in an efficient manner? And we've not had that luxury on this project. So in that sense, it is really a project very different than any other project that I certainly have worked on. And this is the 3rd high-speed rail project that I've had the opportunity to serve as either project manager or construction manager on. I certainly was part of the high-speed rail 1 in the UK, in London, and before that as construction manager in Korea for their high-speed rail. Those projects are basically funded in full at the front end, and the money flows rather smoothly. This one has incremental pieces of, or tranches of funds, and it kind of trickles down while the political activity and froth, if you will, and trying to take us through the environmental process sort of flows up. And so it's how to optimize the workload with these 2 constraints. And that's probably all I would say at this point in time. That gives you a thumbnail sketch.
We appreciate that. Thank you. not done yet. I got a couple people we need to call out to thank, but I should mention Lisa. Why don't you tell about what you do with your steel and fabrication? Lisa Strain.
We're fabricating the canopy and all the.
Can you talk louder?
I can't.
Oh, you don't have much voice.
No, not right now. We're fabricating all of the station canopies and this metals on phase one right now. And hopefully we'll be doing phase two as well. Working all the stainless steel.
On the Expo.
On the Expo, yes, Expo, phase one. So I lost my voice in Vegas last week.
All right, hear your voice. There's a couple people, there's sort of an interesting situation here. I'm going to come back to Kevin in a minute, but I also want to do a shout out to Dwayne Weisenhouse in the corner here. Transit Coalition gets involved in a lot of different projects. They always have issues and problems. For a long time, the Downtown Regional Connector was moving along, and what we consider to be the key station, which is at 5th and Flower, was just moving along great. It's the center, there's the hotel business next to it, there's high-rise buildings, it's the financial district. It's like what we would call a no-brainer. All of a sudden, the project took a little change, there became some budget problems, and the next thing you know, the station that was chosen to be eliminated was probably the most important station in the project, which is 5th and Flower, because of budget. So one of the folks that helped us out was Dwayne. He poured over the EIRs, poured over every angle, and eventually, because of the pressure that Dwayne and some others, Transit Coalition was involved too, we put on at one point the directors, I mean, you can just imagine if you know how transit works, the bizarre situations come out. It was at the end of October, going into Thanksgiving holidays, the Metro Board decided that maybe the business owners could come up with $2 million between November and December. It's like, what? And it's like
in the middle of this recession when you're losing their tenants, and so they're trying to struggle to survive, and you compress the market. They expect to come with this additional funding that they've never asked, all of a sudden they're asking that funding.
right, and it's like, well, this is the piece of the project we weren't even defending because it was like, well, it's obvious. This is the busiest station right now. The problem with 7th and Flower is that that station is so busy. They're possibly even talking about a portal with the new hotel they're putting where the Wilshire Grand is now. They're possibly talking about another portal right there. There's all these other capacity and fire life safety issues at that station. And you know, it's the busiest transfer station because of the red line and the purple line. And all of a sudden they put down, which probably would be another hugely busy station, because as we know, people don't like to walk in Los Angeles. And as a result of that, you want to walk from 7th Street down to 4th Street.
Uphill.
Up a hill, right. But seriously, no, I walk the hill, and I'm not exactly Mr. Physically Fit, but it's a killer hill if you go up that hill. It's like that. So I want to thank Dwayne for his work on that particular
Now,
project.
Hillary, worked with us, and she really deserves kind of a lion's share of the effort. Hillary Norton. She was able to talk to staff on getting them to at least do their engineering with the possibility that they could put a station up in date. Because they were doing all this engineering work, and as long as it's the right criteria, they'll be able to, it'll be easier for them to incorporate that if at some point they get funding for that.
Right, one of the good things is they're not putting the crossover at 4th Street. They're engineering around it so you could do some cut and cover and not harm an operating rail line. So we finally did come to some conclusions, and now in some of the other controversies, we've kind of figured out that there's a potential to bring to the Metro Board that anybody bidding on the construction can bid on a baseline project and then some add-ons. So if you can, the project has $870 million in the bid, then you can do the baseline project, but you can include the extra station within the budget as option A and option B. So that may be called out. I'm not sure if that's going to come about, but as a result of the hard work, there's still a chance we can get that station without having it years and years down the line and be one of those, why did they put the station in here? So I want to give Wayne a clap. Yeah. Now, in Kevin's case, Kevin wrote me an email, I think it was about a year ago, and it just came live again. Right now, Metrolink is meeting with the folks at the LA County Fair, in, I think that Thursday, and I got an email saying, what kind of ideas, and maybe you can explain exactly what you were asking, and maybe we can get some brainstorming ideas out of the question, because this is like live stuff.
Well, as of last year, people here may be aware that the Metrolink runs special trains during the LA County Fair, which is in September annually. And these trains stop right at the fairgrounds, the Fairplex in Pomona, at the parking lot there. And otherwise they don't stop there at the little platform and gate. And there are a couple of issues about this. One, prior to last year, they had been stopping every day during the week. And for various reasons, they had changed to only stopping on the weekends. And so that was one thing I was inquiring about. And the other thing was that in order to find out about this service, there were some announcements here and there, but if you went to the county fair's website, there was no mention of it. If you looked at directions on how to get here, we gave directions for getting there by car, but no mention about this Metrolink service, and Metrolink going out of its way to have a special stop, or the local bus service that stopped at the Fairplex. And so I thought this was a little silly and actually not good for the Metrolink service, and so I inquired with Bart about what might be done about that.
So as a result of that, some new ideas have come forth. So if anybody has any particular ideas, we're going to be submitting them to Metrolink tomorrow, because they're meeting with the Fairplex. And if anybody doesn't have my email, it's on the back of the newsletter here, somewhere, info@transitcoalition will get to me, or whatever, or I can give you a card. But the whole idea is that, you know, if the public wants something, we can actually get some really good results.